It's a self-proclaimed carnivore. I actually have a number of cookbooks that teach you how to cook meat. I have one specific cookbook that teaches you how to cook ribs. The frightening thing in that cookbook is the overwhelming majority of recipes are for pork ribs, right? If you go to Kansas City, you go down the south, ribs are not beef ribs, ribs are pork ribs. And now I say to myself, what's the proper religious perspective? Should I say, ugh, pork is disgusting, not interested? Or do I say to myself, I would love to try that. That looks really good. But what can I do? The Torah commands me not to. Now, let me take a step back and ask you, why am I talking about pork ribs on Parshas Chukas? All right, the laws of kashrus are not here. So I do so because of the idea of a chok in a beautiful, beautiful medrash. Right? Rashi quotes a medrash, Zot chukat haTorah. This is the chok, right? We understand chok to be something which doesn't have a rational explanation. That I'll get to in just a second. And Rashi says that the Satan, right, maybe our evil inclination, and the nations of the world, they come after us and say, what are you doing this for? It doesn't make any sense at all. And therefore, the Torah says, Zos chukas Torah, this is a chok, it is decreed. You're not allowed to wonder, you're not allowed to reject it, you can't question it. You simply just do it. The source for that Rashi, right, the Medrash is quoted in the Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara in Yuma gives a number of examples of rational mitzvot and what we would consider a chok, something with no reason at all. So listen carefully. But this is a pasuk in Vayikra. At mishpatai ta'asu, a mishpat is the rational law in the Torah, right? What are examples of that? Interestingly, idolatry is rational. Gili arayos, right? Illicit relationships, murder, theft, cursing God, right? Those all make sense. Those are mishpatim. Those make 100%, right? Rational, logical. We get it. Ved chukotai tishmoru. You should observe my chukim, my statutes, my illogical, non-understandable. I know it's not a word. Laws. Talks about the Satan and the nations of the world. And what are they? Number one, eating pig, achilas chazir, and wearing shatnez, chalitza for yavama, which is fascinating for another time, and the purification of the mitzorah and the goat that is sent out on Yom Kippur into the wilderness. And maybe you'll wonder about these mitzvot. Comes the Torah to say, Ani Hashem chakachti, I set these down, and you cannot question them, right? Eating pig is a chok, right? And now let's take one more step back and ask, are we allowed to try and understand the reason for a chok? Some people say no, right? There's no, or they'll say, there's no point in the exercise because there's no reason. A chok is simply something that doesn't make any sense. Right? The Rambam does not believe that. The Rambam believes that everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands us has a reason. We just might not understand it. Right? It's not so clear. It's not so obvious. But nevertheless, you can try and look for reasons. Right? We're supposed to try. We're supposed to understand as best as we can. Now, if that's true, then we have to ask ourselves, so what's the problem? Why don't Hashem just give us the answer? Give me the answer. Tell me why I can't do it. The answer to that question, I think, is profound and very important for us as Jews. The answer to that question is as follows. Right? Yes, Hashem won't command us something that doesn't make any sense. But not everything should be readily apparent, because part of our performance of mitzvot is simply because Hashem commanded them. And if every mitzvah made sense, we would lose that ideal, right? I had this conversation, learning with the people from the shul last week, and I said to them, there's so many things throughout the day that you do that connect you to Hashem. When you're honest in business, you're connected to Hashem, you're doing a religious thing. And they looked at me a little puzzled. What does that mean? No, I'm honest because that's the right thing to do. And yes, of course, it's the right thing to do. And it's ethical, it's moral, it's right, but it's also what Hashem commanded you. If all the mitzvot made sense, we would lose the idea of command, of doing something because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do it. Right? That's so important and so fundamental that all the reasons are not apparent because we will lose that. And I think coming back to my pig, I'll ask you the question again. Right? Am I supposed to say, disgusting? Right? With a chok, that's not necessarily true. With something that's obvious, yes, that is true. Right? The act of murder, we should be appalled by it, repulsed by it. It's terrible. It's not something, despite the look around the world, it happens all the time. But a good person, right? We strive to be holy Jews. Murder is not something that we want to do, but Hashem said no, or theft, or those things. But when it comes to the chukim, where the reason is not readily apparent, you don't have to be disgusted by it. You could say to yourself, I have no idea why I can't have the pork rib. I think I'd like to try the pork rib, but what can I do? Hashem has commanded me not to, and therefore I don't do it. And then I take that sense of understanding that I do and don't do based on Hashem's command, and I extend that to every area of my life. I extend it to being honest, to being ethical, to being moral, right? To how we treat people, to all those things that seem second nature, normal. We don't even need a reason for it. And we understand that just like I don't eat the pig because Hashem told me, try and be nice to people, I try and be good because Hashem told me. That is a critically important point in our lives as Jews. That everything we do, whether we understand it or don't, we do because Hashem commands us. Shabbat Shalom.